Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 76, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Whenever you're listening to this, I hope you are doing well here as the new week is well underway. And as if you would think there'd be anything else to talk about, especially at the top of the podcast, it is Murdaugh Mania. It has started here in South Carolina, and I'm sure nationwide, as lots of people have been invested in this case and all the twists and turns. Well, the trial is finally getting started, and already, even though when you think of trials, you don't really think of the jury selection part. You're thinking of when we start hearing opening arguments. We haven't even gotten to that point yet, and there's already some fireworks and all sorts of stuff. So we got to get right into that. But don't worry, we've got some other things to talk about as well. All right, so Alex Murdaugh, we already know he's facing over 100 criminal charges, all sorts of things, financial crimes. But the headline, even though it all kind of ties together, is, of course, the trial that's starting now, where he has been charged in the deaths of his wife, Maggie, who is 52, and his youngest son, Paul, who is 22. Alec, for his, he has said adamantly from the beginning that he had nothing to do with their deaths. He's been saying it since he found the bodies on their property, on one of their family estates back in June of 2021. He's stuck with that part of it. Soon, within a matter of weeks or so, 12 jurors will end up deciding if that is the case or not. So jury selection began on Monday in Colleton County, where this is being held. Prosecutors and defense attorneys are starting to go through, and they had 700 summons for this case, and they just need to whittle it down to 12 jurors. Of course, there's also going to be 6 alternates. So a total of 18 people from this 700 list that they had. So first round, they had 200 people that came in, and the questioning for that first group lasted nearly 3 hours on Monday. They only found about 30 who would qualify for the pool of potential jurors. So they're not even saying that these 30 are going to be it. They are going in these rounds, asking all these questions, things like, what do you know about the case? Do you know the lawyers, all that kind of stuff. And they've got it down to 30 from that 200, but they're just going to be in the pool of potential jurors. So that it's crazy how long that process is going to take. So as of this recording, it looks like they're going to have everything as far as the jury's concerned all situated on Wednesday. So they kept having these rounds of jurors or potential jurors that came in, whittled it down to however much in each round. Then all of them are going to be coming back on Wednesday morning, where they will finally get it down to 12 jurors and the 6 alternates. So it's a long process, as you could tell. The first 2 days, that was a big chunk of it. So, as of this recording, no jury has been set. The plan is, like I said, Wednesday morning. That could change. As you know, of course, you're listening to this potentially on Wednesday, if not after. So some things may have changed there. But some things that won't change are some other details from the first couple days. For those who don't know, prosecutors have said they are not seeking the death penalty. That's been known for a while. They're going to be looking at life without parole instead for Murdaugh. If he indeed is convicted of murder. The minimum sentence, even though they're asking for life, the minimum sentence is 30 years. So a couple things that came out during these first 2 days. There is video from Paul Murdaugh's phone that is time-stamped not long before the killings, and it shows Paul, his mom and dad, Maggie and Alec, talking, and supposedly there's no indication of anger in that clip. That's expected to be played to try, from Alec's side to say, hey, look at this. Everything's good. No one's fighting. There's no arguments. Everything's good here. So that was something we've heard about in the news, but also came up during the trial, beginnings of the trial. And that also Alex lawyers were saying, he never denied he was at the home at one point. But they're claiming he left. Somehow the murders took place and he came back and found the dead bodies. So they're saying, hey, yeah, we know. We've always said from the beginning he was there, and here's video. Everything's great. It doesn't, we'll see, if jurors, what they think of that. Some other evidence that has been talked about in the press and I think in the HBO documentary as well is that there is DNA from the victims on Alex Murdaugh's shirt. But his defense team is saying, that came from him checking for signs of life when he found the bodies. Supposedly when he returned and found, his wife and one of his sons dead, he was checking their pulse. He's, not moving the bodies, but, he touched them. And that's why there's DNA on them. So that's their argument for that portion of things. The defense and prosecution are arguing over something else as well. That is whether or not they are arguing whether a expert should testify that the blood spattered on the Murdaugh shirt when his son was shot. So this came out as well somewhat recently that the prosecution had someone test Alex's shirt from the night of the murders. There was some kind of substance on it, some kind of splatter. They couldn't quite tell what it was, but after running some tests, their expert supposedly said, no, this is blood splatter. The defense lawyers are saying that the expert testing the shirt is lying, number one, and then are also saying that, well, he destroyed this evidence before the defense could conduct their own test. So testing on the shirt used chemicals that made it impossible for any defense expert to do their own testing or even check the original results, the defense said. So they're saying, hey, you might have done this test, but we think, number one, the guy's lying. There's no blood spatter on the shirt. But also we can't even do our own tests on it. So they're trying to get that dismissed. For that portion, there hasn't been a decision yet. The judge he's ruled on some things, but not others. Some they're going to wait until it's actually brought up within the trial, is my understanding from articles I'm reading. So we don't have a decision on the shirt splatter yet. Or I guess I should say alleged or supposed shirt splatter, because we don't know for sure. We're going by what the prosecution is saying. The judge also denied a request, this was on Tuesday, by Murdaugh's lawyers to prevent an expert from testifying that rifle cartridges found near his wife's body have marks indicating they may have been fired from the same gun that fired other cartridges found at a shooting range on the property. Prosecutors have said a similar model gun remains missing from the Murdaugh home. So this is something we didn't really know. This was new as far as what the prosecution claims to have, and the defense is trying to get that blocked. They don't want the expert testifying. So supposedly there are rifle cartridges found near Maggie's body, and this expert seems to believe they came from the same gun that fired other shots, at a shooting range on their property. Obviously, the prosecution trying to say this is a family gun, probably used by Alec. If the bullets probably came from the same gun, it's looking like he might be the one who did it. So they're arguing over that, but the judge did deny that request, so that appears it will go forward. The defense was arguing that recent scientific advances show ballistic experts can't say with 100% certainty that there are unique markings linking a gun to a cartridge. Meanwhile, prosecutors said this kind of evidence is allowed in courtrooms all the time. So in the end, despite those arguments, the expert is going to be able to testify, and the defense lawyers will be allowed to question him in cross-examination, though. So that's where we're at. But some of that stuff you all might not have heard, because it's kind of trickled out here and there in the news, and it's so hard to keep up with it. But to my knowledge, the only thing that we for sure hadn't heard about was this potential gun that was linked to the property. I hadn't seen that anywhere, and I tend to try to stick with like the traditional news sources. I know there's some sites out there, and when it comes to true crime, people are always, there's websites, you don't know who's behind them and things. So I hadn't seen that yet. So other than that, no huge surprises. Everything else kind of going as expected. One thing I did forget to mention is, in addition to the jurors, um, they are also looking at. There is a list of nearly 200 law officers, friends, bankers, and others on a witness list. So there is a potential of over 200 people being called as witnesses in this case. Now, will it be that crazy? Probably not. But depending on how how the trial goes, the lawyers may decide to call someone in. So it's a pretty big list. And included on that list was Buster Murdaugh, who is the uh, older son of Maggie and Alec. So will he have to take the stand? So who knows? But yeah, a list of 200 people, over 200 people, are could potentially be called to the witness stand. So um, like I said, nothing huge, but a couple interesting pieces, and it's also. I was kind of fascinated by what the judge is like ruling on certain things, but then saying other things could wait. It seems, and it's just interesting to me. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I've only watched clips from big cases, so a lot of this stuff is over my head. So I don't know about strategy and all that kind of stuff. But based on what I've read, that's where we're at right now. I'll be sure to update you as it goes on. There's no, of course, as you all know, in trials, there's no set time frame. But one article is saying they're expecting it to be like 4 to 6 weeks, but it might not be that long. So we'll see, but I'll keep you updated on things as we move forward. So let's get out of that. Let's start talking about some more fun things. Let's talk about sports first. College of Charleston men's basketball team is still rolling. They have the nation leading winning streak right now, and they are still in the AP top 20. Congratulations to them. So the Cougars, they're 21-1 so far on the season. They remained at number 18 in the Associated Press men's top 25 poll that was released on Monday. And Charleston is still trying to move up the polls because, of course, every team is. But in addition to just wanting to do that, they also want to pass their all-time high ranking in the poll, which is number 16, which they did in the 1996-97 and also 97-98 season. So they're hoping to get higher than 16 to surpass the school record for their rankings on the AP list. So good luck to them. They actually don't have any games this week after they had 3 last week, but they will return to the TD Arena in downtown Charleston on January 28th to take on Hofstra. It's a hot ticket in town right now. I've had a couple people asking me if I was able to get tickets. I was like, what are you talking about? Just go buy them from the website. They're selling out games. So, if you want to go see the College of Charleston, one of the top teams in the nation this year, you might have a hard time doing it. Like I said, it's a hot ticket. In addition to Charleston, Clemson fans will be happy to know that their team has remained in the top 25, although they did fall from number 19 to number 24. So they're right on the cusp. They fell this last week after they suffered their first ACC loss of the season. That was to Wake Forest back on January 17th. They did end up coming back and beating Virginia Tech after that. So, losing streak stopped at 1, so good for them. They're 16-4 on the season, 8-1 in conference play. They hosted Georgia Tech on Tuesday. I recorded this before that game went final, so unfortunately I don't have that score for you, but you can Google it. They'll also be at Florida State this Saturday. And even though they lost last week, they continue to lead in the conference standings by 1 game over Virginia. And I was, a little sad to see in the AP poll, my UConn Huskies have fallen 1 spot behind College of Charleston. So that's right, Cougars fans. You are currently ranked 1 spot higher than my UConn Huskies. So enjoy it. Hopefully we'll take it back. All right, from sports to music, a pretty big concert announcement was made on Tuesday. The Dave Matthews Band, of course, one of the most popular and successful touring acts in the country year after year, announced a new tour. Of course, they're coming to Charleston, which is why I'm talking about it. But in addition to the new tour, they released a new single and announced that a new album will be coming out on May 19th. So a big day of announcements for them. And as I said, yes, part of that announcement was their summer tour dates. And they are returning to Charleston to play back-to-back nights at Credit One Stadium on Daniel Island. You may remember the band did this last summer, almost a year to the date that these back-to-back shows are taking place. They were here in early June last year. It was the band's first time playing that venue, even though lead singer Dave Matthews had done a duo type show there with Tim Reynolds back in 2020. No, actually, I think it was 2019. It was pre-pandemic. but in any event, the first time the band played, the full band played there was last summer. And normally, for those who follow this band, they don't typically play back-to-back years in Charleston. They might do two shows in a row in their history, but it's been a long, long time. Um, that I was able to find that they've come here back-to-back summers like that. Usually, it would be, a random one-off show like they did at the Joe in 2007, and then they're not back here for 3 or 4 years, and then they'll pop up at like the North Charleston Coliseum. So, normally the band skips over South Carolina and especially the Charleston area. So I'm excited. I'm a big fan, and I know that's polarizing to a lot of people, and I get it. I do. But I am a huge fan. So I'm excited to see them again this summer. Had a great time last year. It wasn't like the first event I had done, but if I remember correctly, it was the first like big concert I had done since the pandemic started. And it was just so great to be back out with people and not being too worried about people around you. And I know COVID's still there and everything, but it wasn't like some of those first events where you were like, I don't know what to do here, and it was just the weather was perfect during the shows. It poured on the second night and I got drenched, but it was well worth it to have fun. I was lucky enough to make it out to a handful of different shows last year at Credit One Stadium, and although it's a little bit of a hike to Daniel Island and parking is the worst out there, as is trying to leave the show. um, the venue itself is nice, and when that weather's nice and you're an outdoor venue like that, the sun goes down, it's perfect. So definitely recommend checking out a show there. We'll see more and more announcements as the year goes on. There's already been a handful announced in addition to DMB, so you can find all that, of course, on holycitycenter.com. But in any event, the band will be playing there June 2nd and June 3rd. That's a Friday and Saturday. Tickets go on sale to the public on February 17th at 10 a.m. If you're a member of their fan club, or, some of these venues offer pre-sales, some credit cards do. There will be pre-sales going on. So if you have any of those options, you can look to those for some tickets. Otherwise, like I said, general sale for the public is February 17th. If you miss out on tickets or those dates don't work for you, the band will be playing in the Atlanta area later in the summer, and they will also be playing, I think, a few weeks earlier. Unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me, but in Wilmington, North Carolina. So a couple shows in the area if those dates don't work for you. Like I said, you can expect more and more concert announcements, not just for Credit One, but other venues around town, as bands and comedians are really getting back into the swing of things as far as touring and things. So I'm excited to bring you all those when they're announced. All right, so with that, that'll wrap up this episode of Holy City Center Radio. For those of you just kind of swinging back in or just discovering it, episodes come out now Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I try to recap the latest news in the Charleston area, sometimes national news. Just all depends on what's going on, what's on my mind. Sometimes I'll be giving opinions on pieces. Other times it's just, hey, here's what's happening. Here are the most important verified details, and that's the end of it. I'm still going to be doing interviews. We had one not this past Friday, the Friday before. I'm lining up some for the future. So we got all sorts of good stuff here, but all focused on the Charleston area and all the stuff I usually write about on holycitycenter.com or on any of the social media channels. If you have any suggestions, anything you want to hear more about, complaints, whatever it may be, you can email me, Christian@holycitycenter.com. If you want to help support the podcast and everything else in Holy City Center land, you can go to holycitycenter.com/shop to pick up some merchandise. You can also go to patreon.com/holycitycenter, sign up for one of those subscriptions. You can cancel anytime. They're cheap, as cheap as $2 per month, and you get some little insidery things, sometimes pre-sale codes. If I have giveaways, sometimes they're specific for Patreon subscribers only, all sorts of good stuff depending on what level you're on. Sometimes you get merch mailed to you randomly, so some good stuff going on there. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins of LMC Soundsystem. She also has a local podcast called FMB Radio. Be sure to check that out. You should also check out Tyler Boone on streaming platforms. He's a great musician. His music is actually what you hear in each and every episode of this show. So if you heard it and been like, hey, I'm digging this, it's Tyler Boone. Go look him up. And with that, I will talk to you all on Friday. I'll have more updates, I'm sure, on the Murdaugh case and whatever else is in the news. Until then, good night and good luck.